I think one of the premier thinkers of our time. It's Malcolm Gladwell on his new Malcolm Gladwell bulletin. The article is entitled "Young Leftists Should Go to the University of Austin. 3 Lessons from My College Years as a Political Outsider."
It's not a fucking school.
Yeah, this is coming on the heels of. I know we had a good laugh at the University of Austin's expense, but the article of Malcolm Gladwell counseling young leftists to attend a university that is unaccredited and cannot confer a degree to you comes on the heels of several people initially touted as being associated with the University of Austin heading for the exits. Steven Pinker, the University of Chicago guy, and some other guy who was actually involved in another university have all dropped out of the University of Austin, Texas. But Malcolm Gladwell is still on board. So shall we take a look at what Gladwell has to say here? So it begins. Last week, a group of prominent conservative intellectuals, Arthur Brooks, Barry Weiss, Larry Summers, Andrew Sullivan, Steven Pinker, among others, announced that they are starting a new university, the University of Austin. The president of this new enterprise is Pano Canelos, formerly president of the Great Books School, St. John's College in Annapolis. A Great Books program? I'd like to know more.
They have a Scholastic book fair there every day.
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all the classics are on the curriculum. Announcing the school's formation, Canelos argued that higher education is now trapped between 2 equally bankrupt models: a small group of elite schools busily engaged in the reproduction of privilege, and a larger group of poor schools fighting to stay afloat. Rich school, poor school, if you will. I gotta say, just a sidebar about the University of Austin. It's always a good indication of how real the education you're going to supposedly receive at this institution is when they have not raised any of the money yet that it would take to start a university. And it does seem like all of the, promotional materials advertising the school are really pitched at investors rather than students.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, this is Howard Stern running for governor.
He could have won, though.
What?
Howard Stern could have won.
Yeah, but, like, that's not why he did it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure Barry could get, like, the money if she really, really wanted to, but I don't know. It's just stunt. Just stunt after stunt.
It is insane to say liberal students should go to this school that does not exist, will not exist, basically cannot exist. This is the exact equivalent of saying conservative students should go to Hogwarts.
And I know I saw a lot of people. I saw that guy Jonathan Haidt, or a couple of other sort of hangers on to the University of Austin and its various luminaries, saying a lot of people are making fun of this, but my kids are I would love it if they went to the University of Austin. And it's like, these people are so full of shit, because the idea that they would ever send their kid to a fucking any college or university that is unaccredited, and again, what do you get for the 4 years you spend there? I guess just networking, but you don't get a degree. So I find it highly unlikely that anyone who's touting this would actually send their kids to this fucking hokum rock and roll university instead of, let's be honest, Princeton, Yale, or Harvard, where they're all going to go anyway.
Or everyone knows by the time their kid is applying for colleges, whether they've got a job kid, a book kid, or a party kid. You could just send them to Dartmouth or ASU, depending on your cultural affinities.
Gladwell continues here. He says, reaction to the announcement of the new University of Austin was, as you may expect in our polarized world, a mixed bag. Lots of liberal types rolled their eyes. Lots of conservatives, like Ross Douthat in the New York Times, loved it. I'm pretty liberal in most of my thinking, but I have to say I'm all in. First of all, just reread that paragraph from Canelos. He's right. We've been arguing as much on revisionist history for years now. That's Gladwell's podcast, I believe. Given how hopelessly and ridiculously screwed up American higher education is, how can anyone possibly be opposed to an attempt to come up with something new? In fact, I'll go further than that. If I were a high school senior looking for a college to go to, my first choice would be the University of Austin, in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we have homemade Pepsi, the prom at home. I mean, my bag must be biracial the way that it's mixed. I mean, it's that really is, calling it a mixed bag. Because there's like 5 people whose job it is to pretend this is a real thing, to say things like, "Oh, if I wasn't 68 years old, I would be applying to go here." Like that's a possibility. It's an Airbnb. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then everyone else just being like, "This is what are you talking like? This isn't anything. This is bullshit."
I'm gonna need to know what the party life is like. What the Greek life and party scene is like at the University of Austin before I would ever consider sending a kid there.
Do they have frats? No. Do they have parties of any kind? No. Do the students have any sort of rapport with one another? No. But if you've ever wanted to play Warhammer 40K for 16 straight days, this is the place for you.
Yeah, even if this was the real place, you would have a better probability getting some tune at like one of those NFT parties.
The only bored apes here are your professors. Now he says, so yes, I would, if I were a high school senior, my first choice would be University of Austin in a heartbeat. Now, why do I say that? My ideological leanings are to the left. Citation, please. I'll need some sources on that.
I'm literally a communist.
And the people behind the University of Austin seem to be mostly conservative in orientation. And I don't know for sure that the University of Austin will succeed in being less expensive or less exclusive than our existing top private colleges. So it seems like a bad fit, right? Why would I go to a school backed by Steven Pinker? I can't stand Steven Pinker. The answer is because our definition of fit is all wrong. Let me explain. When I was in high school, I was a conservative. I subscribed to the National Review, the intellectual mouthpiece of the American right. I can't exactly remember how I came to that position because I wasn't raised in a politically conservative home. I can fill that in for you. He came to that position because it was the most annoying thing possible, and Gladwell has, been making a career out of that ever since he was a teenager. He goes, quite the opposite. By the time I was 16, I was a little right-winger. I even named my jade tree William F. Buckley and put a picture of Buckley on the side of the pot and composed a small rap in its honor. With apologies to MC Chris and his immortal Fets Vet, I'm a sucker jade tree, can't grow much higher. All you other houseplants can call me sire.
This is like an order of operations problem for bullies. Like, what are you going to beat the shit out of him for first? Like, having a jade tree, naming it after William F. Buckley, just sort of tying it into an MC Chris song.
That's right, kids. These are the people who are going to be going to University of Austin. Guys like that.
I've got the answer about what the social scene is like. Then I went to Trinity College at the University of Toronto, put a poster of Ronald Reagan on my wall, and discovered that there was no more than the smallest handful of conservatives at my college. Shout out to Nigel Wright if you are reading this. I was all but alone in a sea of comfortable 1980s Canadian liberalism. And guess what? It was one of the best things to ever happen to me. That's rather grim, Malcolm. I would have said interviewing Gucci Mane was probably one of the best things that ever happened to you.
Wait, he interviewed Gucci Mane?
Yeah, Gucci Mane read all of his books in prison and became a huge Malcolm Gladwell fan.
Well, I mean, it's not like, I guess you can probably convert to anything in prison.
They won't let the January 6 rioters read Malcolm Gladwell's books in prison because they're being censored.
It would suck if that became the biggest prison gang.
They're called the Outliers.
Yeah, the Outliers overtake the DC Blacks and the Aryan Brotherhood in the federal system within 5 years.
Yeah, because they spend 10,000 hours practicing being the best prison gang.
Yeah, your initiation is that you have to track like smoking cessation to teen pregnancies rising. You have to do Freakonomics on the wall of a cell.
you have to send a kite to someone that's like the big power of thinking small. And it's written on an entire roll of toilet paper that you've boofed up your asshole.
Is Gucci still in contact with Gladwell?
I hope so.
Gladwell is like pretty plugged. I was just thinking like maybe Malcolm Gladwell could, because Gucci has like a pretty successful record label now, but like half his roster is in prison, and like maybe he could help. I don't know. Like, lawmakers are stupid enough to think like Malcolm Gladwell's cool. Like, they all have read his stupid bullshit, and like I don't know, he could get Pooh Shiesty out, maybe.
Gladwell, if you're listening, get on this. I also just his thing about being a college conservative and immediately putting up a poster of Ronald Reagan on his dorm room wall just shows that Gladwell, this was his political orientation was just an annoying affectation he did for attention and to like sort of differentiate himself as like a cool, interesting person. Because if he really had the fire in his belly, and the fact that he, claims to be a liberal now and then was raised in a liberal household, then he named his jade tree after William F. Buckley and then put up a poster of Ronald. It just shows me that he's not, was never then or now a real conservative. Because if you're a real conservative college student, you don't put up a poster of Ronald Reagan in your fucking bedroom, in your dorm room. You put up a poster of like Charles Atlas lifting weights, sort of like hunky firefighters,
Russell Crowe and
Gladiator, or just sort of like classic Hollywood like starlets of yore, like Barbara Stanwyck or Marlene Dietrich, things of that nature. I mean, photographs of like shirtless men cradling infants that says, and then like it says father on the bottom or something like that. Like I think that's how that's what a real campus conservative would decorate their dorm room with. Ronald Reagan, that shit's like you go to college and you put up a poster that just says rock band on it.
Yeah, no, that is movie casting college conservative. I mean, now what you would do is you would get an amphibian creature who has too many chromosomes. You'd say it's your friend.
So it says here, from my time as a conservative outcast, here is what I learned. Number one, you learn more from those whom you disagree with than from those you agree with. This seems to me inarguable. I used to engage in raging debates in my conservative years about Canada's system of national health care. The people I was arguing with were repeating the party line. Their job was easy. I, on the other, was taking a heretical position. Everyone else was waiting to pounce on my every claim. I had to think. I had to learn. And before long, that enforced thinking and learning made me realize my positions on healthcare were pretty weak. So, I mean, now he supports Canada's national healthcare system, which he could have bypassed just by not having this like conservative fad. I mean, what more did he need to learn about it?
Well, I think it's normal for like kids, especially like solidly middle class, like college attending kids, to have some sort of annoying affectation, right? I think everyone does it. Everyone in that milieu, like we've all done it. And like oftentimes it can be political. But I think
did you have a political fad in college, Felix?
I mean, like, I like everyone dabbled in Chuck Baldwin's Constitution Party. This was the thing to do in 2008, 2009 or so. It just, I mean, I guess that's what makes Gladwell special, though, is he just like never stopped doing that. He just never stopped having the annoying affectation, even though he's like 60 now.
But like, he's like, I eventually came around to the correct position, but only after, having the metal of my spurious conservative beliefs tested enough times by liberal Canadians. I mean, whatever. I guess I see there's some benefit in that. Number two, college years are a great time to be intellectually uncomfortable. I mean, imagine if I had been a card-carrying, standard-issue Canadian liberal in those years. What exactly would have been the point of going to the University of Toronto? I would have done as well staying home, listening to the reassuring murmur of CBC radio and rereading old Robertson Davies novels. The single most exhausting and ridiculous thing about the current discourse around education on both the left and the right is the notion that college years represent an all-or-nothing battleground for the hearts and minds of young people. That if you don't win someone over at 18, they are lost to you forever. Is there a single shred of evidence to suggest that this is true? I mean, I think there's like a fair amount of data that suggests that, at least in America, the party of the first president that you vote for is usually the party that you'll stay voting for the rest of your life. But that's not to say that there aren't outliers there.
Right. I mean, if he were to make this point in the correct way, it would invalidate the need for University of Austin, which is, I think, for like even if it was like total indoctrination in every fucking university, it like kind of doesn't matter because it's just straight through like people's ears for the most part. Like even for college kids, even for like that sort of income, the default is not to care about politics. Like that is for a select group of Americans, even within the college people who attend college. But if you admit that, then it's like, why are we making this ghost kitchen of a university?
It says here, far from being this high stakes window of intellectual development, college should in fact be thought of as the opposite. It ought to be an exhilarating indulgence. It ought to be 4 lazy, serendipitous, meandering years during which a student has the freedom to dabble and experiment and make massive intellectual errors. I mean, like, he's right that, that basically is what college is, and it is an indulgence, and it is for the laziest, most meandering years of your life. But it's just most people do it because, I mean, like, that's the only thing there is to do, and if they get anything out of it at all, it's the fact that they're dabbling and, you know, having sex and having fun for the first time in their lives.
You know, I have an idea for how to have a college experience that keeps people out of a bubble like that he's so terrified of and exposes them to different ideas. It's called not having it at all. Abolishing it completely. Like, of course, people need to learn things, specialized skills, and of course they have the desire to pursue inquiry after their secondary schooling. And I think that should be free and accessible in every city and town in America, but not a fucking campus where you get to do what he's talking about, which is spend 4 years perfecting your insufferableness.
Yeah. Like something that would bring people together from different backgrounds and get people out of like their comfort zone or bubble in a way that isn't, you know, meandering, and I don't know, maybe imbue some confidence and real life skills. Would be like, I don't know, instead of like 4 years of college, like a 2-year like WPA program that everyone goes to after high school, where you just
then
like,
people would want to work.
Yeah. no one wants to work anymore.
I mean, like the whole thing with it, like with the obsession over like ideological rigidity at college. I mean, we talked about this on the episode with Bessner recently. This is another thing of like content versus form. The content isn't really important because like for the longest time, how many of those fucking neocons were trots? You know,
Yeah,
all of them. Everyone is like a fucking radical in college. It's part of the butterfly blossoming back into the larvae. But the form of the thing you're learning of getting people fired, that's the important thing. That's the only thing that sticks.
Yes. Complaining to the manager. That's what you're really learning in college.
I mean, like thinking back on my college experience, or just like the college experience broadly of like people I've known, or people who are interested in politics now. It does seem to me that, like, speaking for myself, I went into college with views and attitudes that are a lot closer to the ones I have now than when I was like conditioned with like what is like the smart thing to think, or like how can I make this like more complicated or nuanced, or do the reading or whatever. Folks never do the reading. Going into college, I was just like, war is bad and should never be in. War should be avoided at all costs. Almost all of the wars America fought, we've been the bad guy. And Bush definitely did 9/11. And then over 4 years of college, that was sort of winnowed out of me just slightly, to the point where I remember thinking like, yeah, it was a good thing that the United States intervened in World War I. I don't know why I came to that position, but it was just like, I was like, oh, this is smart. Because it's complicated. I was doing the thing Gladwell is talking about, which is like, trying out different fits, different ideological and political fits, but they were all stupid. So
again, form over content.
For goodness sake, when I was in my third year of college, I wrote an essay defending McCarthyism. I actually reread it recently. How the fuck does he still have his college essays on file? Oh, God, I mean, this is just...
His parents had the world's biggest refrigerator.
This is insufferability maxing. I mean, I don't know. Like, I haven't fucking thought about school even once since, like, the second I left it.
That's what this is for. That's what the University of Austin is for. It's for these Gladwell guys to do back to school, to do Rodney Dangerfield shit. Like, that's why... that's the people who care most about what's happening in our college campuses are the ones who have been out of school the longest, the ones who are closest to death, and the ones that are therefore most fixated on fantasizing about a time in their life when they didn't have to piss 8 times a night.
He goes, I actually reread it recently. It was totally bonkers. And what happened? Not much, except that one day after dinner, I had a long animated discussion about it with a very brilliant older classmate named Peter Johnson, who has gone on to be a history professor, who very gently and wisely explained to me all the ways I was a lunatic. The after-dinner discussion with Peter Johnson was the education. My crazily contrarian essay on McCarthyism had the wonderful side effect of luring me into a productive discussion with older and wiser peers. Had I written the standard anti-McCarthy version of that argument, then my conversation with Peter Johnson would have probably been about the Toronto Maple Leafs or the new Rush album. What a waste. I mean, it wouldn't have been a waste because you would have had the correct idea to begin with, which is that, yeah, like you are a lunatic to defend Joe McCarthy.
The underlying assumption of this article, the thing that propels all of it is me, Malcolm Gladwell, and my contributions to thought and letters are all thanks to my choice to go to a college that was different from my ideology at the time. The assumption being that there's anything of value with his entire life. Like, oh, look at what happened when I went to this school that challenged my beliefs. Who gives a shit? You shouldn't exist. Your books are dog shit. You are pap for idiots. You have made yourself very wealthy. Congratulations, but you have contributed nothing to the collective understanding of the human race. You're a fucking waste of space and time.
Well, I mean, we talk about a waste of time. It just seems like his pre-college dabbling in conservative contrarianism was a waste of time because he eventually came around to all the fucking the beliefs that he now takes for granted.
He is a waste of time. He is a human waste. He should not exist. Why should we care what his process was? You're wondering how I got to these interesting opinions I have that your fucking uncle reads on the shitter. Who cares? He's literally contributed nothing. And of course, I haven't contributed anything, but my God, at least I don't assume that there's anything to be learned from my specific intellectual journey as though the fruits of it are somehow a value for civilization.
Well, as he says here, the whole point of adolescence is that at that age, your ideas don't matter yet. Be brave. Try and defend Joe McCarthy to Peter Johnson. I really hope everyone who attends a four-year university can have a Peter Johnson experience.
No, he means literally go to Peter Johnson's house.
The reason we go to such pains to build dedicated spaces for academic discovery is that we want people to take advantage of that freedom at the one time in their life when making stupid arguments can be done without penalty. What are you talking about? You're a fucking millionaire now because you've made stupid arguments without penalty. It just seems like you're right. It just seems like it just trained him to continue making stupid contrarian arguments for the rest of his fucking life. So in that sense, he should be a big fan of the university system because it's worked out great for him. The third lesson, finally, what you are taught and what you learn are two different things. Again, I would have thought this was perfectly obvious, but for some reason in 2021, this is a radical idea. Who is arguing against this? I mean, this is... It's like saying, if you don't stop and smell the roses, you'll miss all the pretty flowers or something. I thought this is a controversial statement in 2021.
He invented a straw man to argue against a Snoopy poster.
He goes here, think about the absurd debate over critical race theory, which is powered by the idiotic assumption that if you expose tender young minds to critical race theory, they will come to espouse critical race theory. Critical race theory is, to its detractors, the ideological equivalent of crack cocaine, a theory so addictive, so powerful, so intimately connected to every dopamine receptor in the brain that even the briefest exposure to it will cause students to forever believe that white people are the devil. Really? Why wouldn't it have the opposite effect? I've read a fair amount of CRT, particularly the marvelous work of Derek Bell. Silent Covenants, his classic, is a really good book. Reading about it made me think about things I'd never thought about before. It made me see the effects of racism in a new light. It made me love Derek Bell. But did it turn me into a CRT disciple? Not really. Mostly because if you read critical race theory, then you realize that it isn't a theory like E equals MC squared. It's just the attempt, oh God, blah, 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 going on here. So it says, skipping to the end here, it just says, if an 18-year-old Malcolm had been a liberal, I would say he should definitely enroll at a school like the University of Austin. Give his ideas a stress test. Learn how to defend his positions against worthy opponents. But if all the University of Austin does is attract students who already think the way that the professors at the University of Austin think, then I would say the school is a failure. So to all you young conservatives out there, I say, stay away from Austin. Go to Oberlin and spend 4 years engaged in some very productive squirming and double-taking at the back of the classroom. So there you go. That's Malcolm Gladwell's advice to high school grads.
Again, Oberlin is an actual university you can go to.
Yeah.
Right.
I've got classes. They issue degrees. There's a cafeteria with banh mi that's appropriate or whatever the fuck. There's actually a place you can go. This is literally a P.O. box.